But also as you breathe through your nose, and I have my nose with me, I never go anywhere without this.
Never going without your nose. All right, good.
So there's a gas called nitric oxide that's released into the nasal cavity.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about this. So Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer, was on Joe Rogan's show, and he's big into the nasal breathing, and he does all sorts of really weird stuff. Like
he's brilliant.
Carries weights underwater in his pool. I want to go to Maui and train with him.
I've done it.
You have?
Yeah, because I'm their advisor for breathing.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I do the training with them.
Oh, nice.
So we're using the same idea.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal now. So for a non-athlete like me, it's absolutely shocking. But the only thing I would tell you, I was dreading it coming up. It was coming up in July of this year, and I said, Jesus, like, I don't mind any of this stuff, but it's really, really tough. And afterwards, you're just feeling, it's amazing. So when you feel that kind of release, the apprehension beforehand, and then the release afterwards.
Is it tough because you're also worried about drowning as well?
No, because they have a Navy SEALs guy there.
Okay.
So there was a guy called Jeff, the frogman, and he's looking at you, watching you the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, that's an extra panic element for some people. Right?
And this is where it's mind over matter.
Right.
Because it's all about surrendering. Like ice baths are one thing, working with them in terms of that you're surrendering to the cold. But when you go down, and it's fairly deep, it's probably 16, 20 feet deep. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. So you're going down with weights, and you're walking across the pool with the weights, and then you're supposed to come up the other end with the weights.
Right. And meanwhile, your CO2 levels are going up and up and up.
Yes,
and up.
And the tolerance to breathe. So you're really feeling, that hunger to breathe. Now, you can cope with it. So there's a psychological thing and there's a physiological thing going on here as well. So it's very interesting. And I think Laird, when I seen him doing the exercises, like we're doing the exercises, and I seen Laird doing the pulse oximetry, everybody is pushing themselves fairly much. And he is doing it to a totally different level. Like he dropped down to 50% SpO2. I have never done it. I have never seen it done with anybody without having to hyperventilate. So it's easy to do it if you hyperventilate beforehand because you get rid of so much CO2.
Yeah.
So you can hold your breath for so much longer to drop your blood oxygen saturation. He didn't hyperventilate. So his tolerance is just through the roof. But that's the kind of individual he is. So it's very interesting stuff.
Okay, and he always talks about the nitrous oxide that gets released in your nose, but go ahead, show us your nose.
So here is the nasal cavity. Now, when we're talking about the size of the nasal cavity, we always consider you put the tongue into the roof of the mouth and drag your tongue along the roof of the mouth until you feel the soft palate at the back. So the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. Okay. So most people will consider that the nose is just this. This is about 20%. Okay, so your nasal cavity is going
all the way back.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why it looks so big there.
Exactly. Okay. So the air that's coming in here, nitric oxide is released into the nasal cavity.
And how does that work?
Breath, it's released. I don't think it's fully understood.
Okay.
It was only discovered in the human nose in 1991.
Wow, that nitric oxide gets released in your nose when you breathe through your nose.
Well, it's getting released continuously.
Okay.
But the key is to breathe through the nose so that you're capturing nitric oxide.
Okay.
The concentrations of nitric oxide through the nose are 50 to 200 parts per billion. The concentration of nitric oxide through the mouth, 10 parts. So there's no comparison. Now, so if you're breathing through your nose, you're carrying this nitric oxide into the lungs, and nitric oxide redistributes the blood throughout the lungs. Nitric oxide helps to open up the airways. Nitric oxide sterilizes the incoming air. And, if we were to consider not just the normal individual, there's a benefit for anybody breathing through their nose during physical exercise. Number one, increased oxygen diffusion because your breathing is slower. So you're giving enough time for oxygen to diffuse from the lungs into the blood. Number two, increased CO2 in the blood with nasal breathing because of the resistance to breathing. And it's the increased CO2 which will make sure that more oxygen gets delivered from the red blood cells to the cells, to the muscles, so you can stay aerobically for longer. Number three, nasal breathing is protecting the airways. How many people have exercise-induced bronchoconstriction? How many people get cyclist cough? Because if you're breathing, especially in an endurance event, all of that mouth breathing, you're drying out the entire mouth, the throat, the lungs, and if moisture is sucked from the airways, that causes inflammation. Number four, dehydration. you lose 42% greater water by breathing in and out through the mouth. And also a dry mouth is more conducive to inflammation of the gums and dental cavities. Do dentists looking inside the mouths of long-distance runners see a greater instance of tooth decay and dental problems? Not just because they are drinking high sugar containing sports drinks, but because of the dry mouth, which is impacting their dental health. So nasal breathing is just one of those gases, and it also plays a role in sleep, because here you don't want this airway collapsing, the upper airway. And it's not fully understood. Even 2016, researchers, the full benefits of nasal breathing is not fully understood. Now, when I have the nose, I'm going to talk about kids for a second.
Okay.
Kids with enlarged adenoids. Enlarged adenoids are when this lymphatic tissue here is swollen. And as a result, the child isn't able to breathe through the nose.
Okay.
But enlarged adenoids are relative to the size of the airway. If a child has enlarged adenoids, they don't just have enlarged adenoids. It's likely that they have a small airway. And this is where, if we are to address obstructive sleep apnea, we have to start when the kid is this age. And the best way to start is getting the child breathing through the nose with the tongue resting in the roof of the mouth, but also the assistance of a dentist or an orthodontist who has got a good depth of knowledge in functional development of the face. Because if we can get the child breathing through the nose, and we give them exercise, and I'll show you how to decongest the nose, it's very easy.
Okay.
But get the child breathing through the nose and getting the airway developed, then the child will get away and possibly can get away that they don't have to have an adenoidectomy.
Right.
Because if we get breathing through the nose to harness nitric oxide by sterilizing and conditioning the air may help, and we've seen it happen in practice. We don't fully know what's going on. But I would say to parents that really with your children, and enlarged adenoids and rhinitis is common, really encourage the children to embark on breathing practices. Now, we've put on a children's course online about 2 years ago for free. So there's no cost. I put a lot of the videos up on YouTube. The children can sit down, just look at the YouTube videos, how to decongest the nose. And my goal next year is to do a complete program for kids, absolutely free. We're not even going to ask for your email address, nothing. So there's no obligation. Because I think we can't just allow this to continue. It's a car crash waiting to happen.